time to visit and contract and see two separate professionals in two different offices. And you hear this from legal services providers that if someone has to take time off from work or has to pay for public transportation for an appointment for a legal issue, that is a significant opportunity cost for them in terms of what they're expending. And if you're able to take the paraprofessional and the lawyer and put them in one office, it does facilitate one-stop shopping. It does lower the transactional costs for the consumers.
Okay, and then, and apologies if I mispronounce. I mean, I have a lifetime of experience of having my name mispronounced, so I'm sensitive to it. So apologies. Is it Mr. Broughton?
Broughton, Mark Broughton.
Broughton,
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Depends if you're English or you're not English as to how you say that.
Whatever the lowbrow way is of saying it, that's how I'd say it.
Well, I have a number of questions and I don't want to be here till midnight. So I'm going to ask a few of them just very quickly. And by the way, I took a course probably 20 years ago in Death Penalty College on what you are calling trauma informed training. I could teach it to you very quickly, but in any event, in my business, everybody's dealing with trauma, so you have to know what's going on. Very quickly, what is the impact, if anything, or the anticipated impact on OCTC on having to regulate these people if they get in trouble? I'm just going to ask these quickly, and you can answer them or not. What is the client security fund that you're talking about, and is there any consideration for these people to be allowed to manage client trust accounts? You talked about having insurance, and I'm wondering if anybody has spoken to the insurance industry to find out if they would actually insure these people for malpractice, and if so, what would the cost be? And then I'm just wondering, has the Supreme Court been maybe approached to get their feeling about this in any way, shape, or form? So those are a number of questions, and you can answer them.
And those are going to be I think Leah is going to be better equipped to answer them. I will chime in to say that, we did get some feedback on the malpractice cost and with it being extremely high. But anyway, I'll let Leah respond to those questions. I am going to have to go, although I'm going to try to call in. Linda, is it possible for you to send me a phone number where I could try to call in while I'm driving? And
I don't know that I have that. I think.
Okay, well, we can get it for you.
Yeah,
Okay.
so if someone could get that to me, I will try. I think that Mr. Broughton's questions are best responded to by Leah. And if Brandon Stallings, what was your question? Just so I know whether I should jump in and try to respond to it before transitioning to phone.
I think mine kind of piggybacks off of Mark Tony's question, which is the non-attorney ownership. I think I see that as a massive issue, and I'm just wondering how integral that piece is to the implementation of this program. So that was my first one.
Certainly. So, I mean, look, is it necessary? Of course not. I mean, I think that Leah's gone over and can go over in more detail what the pluses are or the anticipated pluses. If the question is, does the program fall apart? If you take that wheel off the bus, does the bus still go? Yeah, it does. It is not a necessary component.
And then secondly, it appears that there's going to be a substantial amount of statutory change. And so has the legislator been approached about this? What sort of appetite and feedback have we gotten from them?
All right, so with those, I'm going to leave Leah with the laundry list of questions. I am going to try to get to my car and try to call in while I go. Nice seeing everyone, some of whom I saw last time when I had a chance to speak with you. Some faces are new to me. And I'm sorry that, given the givens in the world, that we can't all be in the same room having this conversation, but certainly my honor and privilege to speak with all of you. So thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to start with Mark's question. What I will say is the answer is yes. I'm showing you this not to go over it with you at this hour, but to tell you, first of all, we estimated the costs of establishing the program. But if you look here at OCTC, We looked at the complaints. We looked at the rate of complaints. We used Ontario, Canada. Ontario has the longest established, I don't know if it's been in place, Linda, for how many years, but their licensed paralegal program. They've got 9,000 licensed paralegals who are able to act independently. And based on that data, we looked at the complaint rates. And so we looked at the complaint rates per capita paraprofessional. And using that and our data that we have about the percentage of cases that close in intake, investigation, pre-filing, post-filing, so you can see here the Ontario paralegal complaint rate, California attorney complaint rate. We apply this data all the way across. And so we can see how many cases there might be based on an estimated number of licensees, paraprofessional licensees. So you can see with 30 to 50 licensees, we think we'd get about 247 complaints annually. So I say this to say that my answer is yes, we've estimated that out to a great deal. And you know that 247 complaints compared to our 16 or 17,000 complaints on the attorney side is not very significant. So I think at the onset, the impact on OCTC, though it definitely needs to be addressed and funded, is nominal. We would hope to have many more than 3,000 licensees. So as we grow the program, the impact would be more significant. So that's question one. On malpractice, I think Justice Petru indicated it was costly. I believe we got other information, and Linda, maybe you could briefly speak to that. We did talk to some malpractice carriers. Bonding is certainly cheaper, but I think there were potentially some options and some that I think would be willing to come into the California market. Go ahead, Linda.
And I think it was hard for them to give precise numbers because they don't even know what the license would look like at this point. But I think we heard that it potentially could be provided at $500 a year for the $100,000, $300,000 policy.
So we did explore that. The client security fund, Mark, is intended to be exactly equivalent to the attorney-client security fund. So a separate fee that paraprofessionals would pay to fund a separate victim restitution equivalent for clients of paraprofessionals. Did that answer your three questions? Or did you have?
I'm not sure I understood the last one. What that meant, that, you know, is that a fee they pay like insurance or something? I don't
No, what you know, attorneys pay $40 a year, I believe, for the client security fund. So the paraprofessional would have a licensing fee, and then they'd have a client security fund fee. It's a separate fee because paraprofessional clients who are victims, right, would not be able to access the attorney client security fund fee. So they'd have their own client security fund fee that is funded by paraprofessional licensees.
Okay, do they manage, or were they allowed to manage client trust accounts?
Yes, under the proposed rules, they are authorized to manage client trust accounts.
I see a problem with that, but that's for another day.
Right, and remember, this today is just asking that it go out for public comment. But
yeah, and all of these costs, you know, have to be passed along to the client, and ultimately, you know, into the cost of the paraprofessional person doing the work. So, I mean, when I talked, you asked me about the client trust accounts, and when I talked to the various firms about that, they all talked about the costs and passing it along to clients and so forth. So that you know, the malpractice insurance, assuming that they will underwrite it, my guess is it's going to be expensive. That has to be passed along. If you're going to have $100,000 a bond requirement, that's going to have to be passed along and so forth. So the idea here is to keep our costs low so that people can afford these folks, but I'm hoping that we don't make it so onerous that the costs are going to be too high.
Right, and I think that it's with that in mind that we've begun to forge a partnership with the California community colleges, because that is one key cost driver. And so that educational entry point will be very low cost and affordable for people. And we did get pricing on bonding. And we did hear from LDAs, for example, who are required to have a bond. That is a cost-effective alternative to malpractice. Let me go to Brandon. So Brandon, you expressed concern about 5.4, and then you had a question about, I think maybe about the Supreme Court and the legislature.
Just curious what sort of outreach has been accomplished to reach out to legislators, and then what their feedback has been, if there's appetite in the legislature for this sort of far-reaching change in California.
So first, I would say somebody asked about the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court did have a liaison to this working group, Greg Fortescue, who was invaluable in developing the recommendations. And I do feel confident the Supreme Court is fully aware of and kept up to date on the work of the working group and ready to receive a proposal if the board chooses to go in that direction. In terms of the legislature, we certainly have begun talking about it, and they certainly have begun hearing about it. When I say they, the legislature, obviously we're not engaged with the legislature writ large, but there is work to do. And that is why this proposal contemplates quite a number of steps before it even goes to the legislature, including getting authorization from the Supreme Court. And there will be work to partner with them. I hope that at the end of the day, we could partner effectively and successfully to bring something to the market. It may look quite different from the proposal today, but certainly we've begun to engage them, and we will continue to do so. Do you want me to call on people, Sean? I think Justice Petru is on the phone too, so we can.
Oh, yeah. Oh, we have hands up. Sorry, Melanie.
Thank you. First of all, I just want to thank the chair for continuing with public comment. I thought it was very helpful. And want to thank the presenting group, Justice Petru and Leah and others, because it was a very thorough and extensive report. You know, and the recognition of that, I for myself, you know, to digest 1,400 plus pages in less than a week with all of the material that we have in front of us, I wasn't really quite sure how to do that. So once again, I would reiterate that when there are presentations that are available in advance, this would have been a lovely one to see prior to have it presented, because I felt like I could have jumped into it a little further. That being said, though, I appreciate the comments. I did have comments, and thank you, Brandon, for asking about the legislature. I believe you asked, or Mark Broughton, I'm not quite sure. And I find that partnership, my experience with relationship building is that partnership should transpire in the beginning. And if it doesn't transpire in the beginning, it should transpire early on in the process. My concern is that this working group has worked so aggressively, and I see the value of what you're doing, but my concern is when people are brought in on the back end. And as I looked at the timeline, and if I'm incorrect in my assumption, because we know what happens when we assume, as I looked at the timeline, it did not appear that legislative input would be coming in for at least until sometime in the spring. And maybe that was incorrect on my part, but if you could highlight that, when that outreach will begin, that would be great to know.
Yes, we began the outreach. Probably Donna did that, and she can speak to that if she's here, before I came back last year. And my understanding is that explicitly we were told, and I've been told, that they want to see us go through our process and submit them a proposal that has been fully vetted, that has been sent out for public comment, and that reflects the will of the board. So we certainly have been in communication about it. They understand what we are doing, and I think they want to see us go through this process. I don't know, Donna, if you're around, I can't tell, but if you are and you feel like jumping in, go ahead and do so. I don't think she's here.
Yes.
So
maybe that's a conversation offline, because they is ambiguous to me. So I'd be probably a little more interested, and we could talk about it offline in terms of who exactly the outreach transpired to in terms of leadership. I think that's important. The other thing is the timeline that has been identified. There was certainly a lot of conversation, and I get that we're not to today. It's just a matter of, moving forward with the report. But the timeline that has been identified as in terms of the ending of March of 2023, what is the driver behind that? And if we were to, in fact, include additional time in the public comment phase and take it out beyond December to somewhere in February or potentially in January, how would that impact the work that the work that needs to transpire to follow that?
I don't know if you want to see you here now, Donna, if you want to jump in. I believe that we settled on March 2023 because that was the latest that we could submit it to the legislature in time for what they intend to do in terms of the vetting, such that it could be included potentially if they decide to authorize any iteration of the program in the 2023 fee bill. So that drove that timeline, and we worked backward from there, understanding that the Supreme Court, of course, also has to, as a first step, authorize us to pursue the program. But Donna, did I get anything wrong or miss anything?
Neither of those. So let me just add a little bit more context. So yes, I mean, this is such a big proposal, and it's something that obviously there are very strong opinions about, strong voices about. The legislature wants us to have our full vetting process, but they also want to have a full vetting process. The last thing that they would want to see is for us to give them a proposal in the last month of the legislative session. That would not allow them to have the appropriate time for their public input, ensure the proposal goes through both houses of the legislature. So March really seemed like the last date to enable the legislature to have the full opportunity for if we were to move legislation during 2023. Otherwise, I'm sorry, during 2022. Otherwise, we would need to push it another year in order to ensure that the legislature is not in a position where they are feeling pushed out of their comfort zone in terms of how much input. As to your first question, Melanie, I did just want to assure you what the timeline described is sort of the formal process for legislative input when the piece of legislation would be moving through the legislature. It wasn't meant to suggest that we haven't had preliminary conversations or in-depth conversations before then, or that we aren't planning a strategy right now for frequent updates and having in-depth communications as we are concurrently with the bill going through the other processes. We want the legislature to have certainly as much opportunity as they need in order to understand the proposal, get the input that they're seeking from us as well as others. So that is going on concurrently, though not, we haven't had in-depth discussions as the committee was developing its proposals, but the Assembly did have an appointee. Linda, shake your head yes, if I'm correct on that, on the Paraprofessional Working Group. So they were also informed through that representation.
Thank you.
Christine.
I think we still have a couple of people in the public who are watching. And so I think one of the concern is the funding of this program. And do we have any slides? So first part of the question is, do we have any slides or some type of informational word that we could share regarding how we're going to fund this? And then number two, the report is pretty voluminous. It's 1,400 pages, and we will have an opportunity to review all of that during the succeeding days. But I want to point my colleagues to page 73 of that report, where it acknowledges that there are some enforcement issues that are at play currently, and I don't know if the program is then ripe for public comment and presentation if we haven't resolved these 4 issues that were raised in page 73, the lack of law enforcement resources to investigate and prosecute all cases. There's a lack of state bar jurisdiction and resources to prosecute cases. Prosecution is limited to misdemeanor in most cases, and potential client confusion regarding licensure of service providers. So the report acknowledges those issues. And so do we need to resolve them? We're going to present them to the public, or we just present them and then figure it out later on how to resolve these issues? So those are my, I guess, one question in 2 parts.
Okay, and Justice Petra, I see you on the phone. Just jump in if you want to answer anything. Okay.
No, I wouldn't. But I will.
Okay.
I mean, but I do think this is more appropriate. You know, the issue. I mean, look, the areas that we thought should be expanded regarding the investigation and prosecution of the unauthorized practice of law is across the board. You know, including with what's going on now, and was kind of outside the scope of our project. And we certainly, as a working group, did not focus on the funding because, again, that's not what we were tasked with. But I do, Leah and I have had some conversation, and so I'm going to have her answer that.
Yeah, so I think, to stand up the program, we have a figure included in the report. I believe we have about 1.5 million for that initial rollout. And in my view, that there's 2 funding sources. One is philanthropy and the other is a loan from what I call our general fund. The model for that exists on the DCA, the Department of Consumer Affairs side. We have numerous examples when a new board is created on the DCA side. There are loans from other boards, inter-board loans, and there are also loans from the general fund. I have begun to approach philanthropy, but this is not ripe for a philanthropic grant at this time. That nobody's going to dedicate funding for something that is so questionable in terms of whether or not it's going to happen at this point. I think once the point, if we get there where a program is actually submitted to the legislature, I will be able to actively pursue getting those resources. And I'm happy for the board to decide that, we can't go forward with the program unless the startup costs are fully funded by philanthropy. That could be an action that you take. And I feel confident that we would be able to generate the necessary funding to get the program underway in the initial instance. Ultimately, it must be self-funded, and that is the long-term viability of the program. With respect to UPL, I have to say, Christine, that there were several members of the working group and liaisons that were confused about the argument in general that creating a new class of state bar licensee was somehow going to increase UPL. Right now, we have notarios that are and again, Justice Petra is right. We heard from some, they find that word very offensive. So I apologize. But we have those folks that are out there completely unregulated. You have immigration consultants who are required to register with the Secretary of State, otherwise unregulated. You have licensed legal document assistants who are required to post a bond and register with 58 different county clerk's offices, otherwise pretty much unregulated. So you've got all these actors out there that right now are unregulated. And we are talking about creating a new class of licensee regulated by the state bar, where anyone could go to the state bar website and check to see if so-and-so is actually a paraprofessional. So as a threshold matter, tying increased resources for UPL to roll out of this program, it sort of assumes that, yes, this program is somehow going to increase UPL. And there were many that questioned that assumption. That being said, the state bar a couple of years ago did pursue a proposal to increase funding for UPL enforcement, specifically trying to get more funding for DA's offices. I think that is something we should continue to advocate for. I think all of those UPL recommendations are really important and we should push them. But I'm not sure that this program should be contingent on those initiatives actually being implemented. So that's my response.
Thank you,
Brandon.
Leah.
Brandon, did you want to talk?
Yeah, so I guess I'm mindful of the time. I know it's 6 p.m. and, as architect of the RAD meeting who, went over a little bit, I feel somewhat guilty in bringing this up. But I mean, I think at some point we either need to send it out for public comment or table it until the next meeting. I take Melanie Shelby's comments about digesting a 1,400-page report because I'm kind of in the same boat as far as looking at the issues that have been brought up by various board members and hearing public comment and really just trying to grapple with some of these issues. And I understand it is sending this item out for public comment, but because of the issues involved, I think it's a little bit more than our garden variety report that we send out for public input, which I think was demonstrated by today's public comment. So Mr. Chair, I don't know if, oh, sorry.
Yeah, let me offer some information about timing. So sorry, Leah. But you go ahead, Leah.
I was just going to say, I think that we could extend it to 90 days. 90 days takes it to, I think, December 26th, which is probably not reasonable. But I think we could extend it to the beginning of January. It would be a very compressed time frame for us to work with. We might have to have a special board meeting, not the January board meeting, to receive public comment and the updated recommendations from the working group. But I understand the concern. I will say we have clarified the resolution for this item and cleaned up what we would be putting out for public comment, which are the appendices with the actual recommendations and the rules. The report is a reference document, but we're not actually suggesting that people need to make public comment on the 1,400-page document. So we have cleaned that up a little bit. But I believe on the staff side, if it makes the board feel more comfortable, it seems appropriate in light of the comments that we could push it back. 60 days, I think, is too much, but we could push it back the beginning of January and try to make something work if that's the will of the board.
And then in terms of our meeting today, let me just share some information. So Ruben and Leah and I have been consulting offline about what our schedule looks like. We're obviously not going to do closed session tonight, and but we think we have, I think, a cushion of time tomorrow to. We don't think the open session items that remain after this item is done, and the closed session is going to, occupy the whole business day tomorrow. So, if the board would like to continue discussing this tomorrow, I think probably an hour is doable. And so I'm kind of getting the sense that people don't feel ready to make a decision at this very moment. So would that be helpful for people to sleep on it and come back and have more discussion and ask more questions tomorrow if they want to?
Yes.
I'm seeing a lot of nodding heads.
Just so I'm clear, the only resolution that we're going to vote on here is to put it out for public comment, whether it's 60 days or 90 or whatever it is, correct?
That's it.
Correct.
I mean, we're not voting on the item itself per se.
No.
So for me, I would just as soon vote to put it out public comment, whether it's 60 or 90 days, because I don't see that we have to read or to, get into all those issues right now.
All right. Mark, Mark Tony, did you want to be recognized?
Yeah, here's what I'll say. I'm gonna, this is a great opportunity. This sounds like a great opportunity. And it's one of those things where I think there's a thin line between being courageous and being foolhardy. And part of how you get to, getting it right is by taking the time you need to get it right. So I have no interest in meeting deadlines on this one. I'm more interested in getting it right. And, we'll see what happens. I'm going to move that we put this out for comment for 120 days.
All right, we have a motion on the table. Is there a second?
I will second 120-day for public comment.
Thank you. All right.
Well,
Are we
share
ready
the
for a vote, or is there any
resolution.
further discussion?
We need to change the motion that's on the screen to read 120 instead of 60.
All right, you've all gotten very small on the screen, so if anyone wants to be heard, speak up. Ruben has his hand up.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. I apologize. I'd like to offer a friendly amendment to that motion if I could. I think we can make it 100 days. If I heard Leah correctly, 90 days was December 26th. Let's just go 10 more days out to get us past the new year, and then folks can start working again when they come back from the holidays.
Mark, do you accept the amendment?
I could live with 100 days.
Okay, I
All
would
right,
support
and
that.
Christine, do you accept the amendment?
I would prefer 120 days because of the holidays.
Okay, I will take that as a no. And people who favor 100 days, I suggest voting no on this, and there can be a second motion afterwards if this motion doesn't pass. Ruben, your hand is still up.
Let me take it down, sorry.
Oh, okay. I just didn't know if you wanted to be recognized again. All right, any further discussion before we vote on the motion on the table? Josh?
Can we just discuss it? I mean, I hate to split hairs here on days, but I understand everyone's position. We're talking about the first few days of January. I know we're trying to keep it as tight as we can, and we're giving but that extra time that everybody has to look at it. And I know Leah's, I agree with Mark Tony. I'm not trying to keep to dates, but at the same time, I want to move it along, have everybody make their comments. Is there an in between the two? Can we do 110 days? Can we try that as a friendly? Because I think that'll put us a little closer to the middle of January.
Okay, Mark, first to you.
I defer to Christine.
I'm fine with 110 days.
Then I am.
Okay.
too.
All right, then we have a friendly amendment to change 120 to 110. Any further discussion?
This is Arnie. Just real quick. We don't have access to the PowerPoint, right, Leah?
The PowerPoints were sent. Louisa, can you clarify what was sent to the board?
Yes, the PowerPoints were sent. It was a complete set of all of the PowerPoints that were presented.
I was just looking in the item itself and I didn't see them.
I don't know. Would you send it again? Because I didn't see
Yes.
it.
Yeah, and the only reason I ask about that specifically is just that I was really interested in the process. You know, once things come back from public comment, those sorts of things like that, what the timelines are after that, and I just wanted to look at that. But that was all. That's the only question I had.
Okay, thank you. Ruben's hand's up. I'm not sure if it's stale or not. So Ruben, just speak up if you want to be heard or don't.
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you. Sorry about that. I can't figure out how to put it down.
Yeah, no problem. All right. Anyone else? All right, Louisa, please take the roll.
Broughton,
Yes.
Cisneros,
Aye.
Chen. Is Highland on? Okay, Dela Cruz. Delenn,
Yes.
Duran,
Yes.
Ganong,
Yes.
Petula,
Yes.
Shelby,
Aye.
Zoll,
Aye.
Stallings,
Yes.
Tony,
Aye.
the motion carries.
All right, thank you. All right, thank you, everyone. We're done for today, so I'm going to recess the meeting. We will have the swearing in ceremony tomorrow at 9:30, and then the Board of Trustees meeting will continue at 10:30. So thanks very much.
I'm sorry. Information. I thought the calendar said 10 o'clock for the swearing in. Did I miss that?
I just looked at it. It says 10:30 for the meeting.
Yes, the The swearing in ceremony will start at 9:30.
Okay, I could have sworn when I printed out the agenda, it said 10 o'clock. Maybe, okay.
That's also what's in my agenda.
Okay, so I'm not the only one
Oh,
who said that it's
is
10
there a
o'clock.
conflict
Not
between the
alone.
documents?
Yeah.
So what time tomorrow? 9:30?
Correct,
9:30.
9:30 tomorrow for the swearing in ceremony.
Yeah, I don't see us, I'm looking at the agenda, it only has, well, it's written, it's a little bit ambiguous. It just says 1:30 PM. I think it's intended to refer to today's start time only, but
Correct. The link right above that under meeting documents, there's a meeting
Yeah.
schedule.
right, yeah, I know, that's what I was referring to when I said it says 10:30. But everyone knows now, 10:30.
Okay.
So,
But Sean, do we need a quorum of the board to do the swearing in? I think when you're saying 10:30, there's 9:30 to 10:30 is the swearing in of the new board members. I don't know, actually, I probably should, if we need a quorum of the board to do that.
no, we don't, because they could just sign an oath on paper and not, it's a ceremonial event, so.
Okay, so
Yeah.
is our message to our board members that they need to show up by 10:30? They're welcome to show up at 9:30.
Correct. I
Okay,
encourage you to show up at 9:30. So it's always a nice event, and Justice Groban's going to deliver some remarks, so I think it would be good to attend. All right.
Be done by noon.
No, I don't think so. But perhaps by early to mid afternoon, we'll be done. I think that's our prediction, Leah. Is that about right?
yes.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
the death knell on this short meeting.
Okay.
Right, Brandon?
Oh, I'm jinxing it. So, all right. Well, everyone, thanks for hanging in. This has been a really long day, and I appreciate your attention and all your comments. And I will see you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.